Good morning. I'm very pleased to meet you in this virtual meeting room. My name is Sibylla Martinelli, and together with my colleague Isabel, I'm hosting today's event. We are the two Swiss national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. And I will guide you through the slides today, and Isabel will be in charge of the chat. We are recording this webinar. So for maximal quality of the transmission, all microphones are muted by default, except for mine, of course. And also cameras should be switched off. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded on our YouTube channel after the event. So if you want to rewatch or send the link to interested colleagues, please feel free to do so. We will also send you the presentations in a follow-up email after the event. We will do our best to answer your questions during this event. We will exclusively answer your questions via the chat function. There's no possibility to ask oral questions during the webinar. Questions that arise later or that could not be answered in the chat can be sent to msca@euresearch.ch. As Swiss NCPs, Isabel and I are responsible for researchers who are currently in Switzerland or intend to come to a Swiss host institution. For everyone else, please go to the following website indicated here in the link below to find out whom to contact in case of questions. And here's a last important fact before we start looking at the Marie Curie actions. There are absolutely no restrictions on participation for Swiss researchers and institutions whatsoever. The European Commission claims that there is an MSCA, a Marie Skłodowska-Curie action, for every stage of a career. If you want to know more about the other actions, I would like to invite you to check on the official MSCA website indicated on this slide. Today's webinar is about the individual fellowships, abbreviated IF. What they share with the rest of the Marie Curie actions is their focus on mobility, on researchers' training and career development. Today, you should get an idea of what the individual fellowships are about. You will get to know the eligibility criteria and different features of the IFs, different subtypes. You will also get some information on call statistics. You will learn about the proposal structure. And last, but very importantly, you will learn what kind of support and training you can get and where to turn to in case you're interested in applying for a Marie Curie individual fellowship. This is one of the main take-home messages for today. The individual fellowships of the Marie Curie actions are all about genuine mobility and career development of excellent researchers. So they are not just a regular research project, but much more. The Marie Skłodowska-Curie individual fellowships are individual, transnational fellowships. They are awarded to the best or most promising researchers. They can be seen as opportunities for experienced researchers looking to give their career a boost by working abroad. Or they offer exciting new learning opportunities and a chance to add some sparkle to researchers' CVs. The goal of the individual fellowship is to enhance the creative and innovative potential of researchers who wish to diversify their individual competence in terms of skill acquisition through advanced training and also through international and intersectoral mobility. Individual fellowships provide opportunities to acquire and transfer new knowledge and to work on research and innovation in Europe and beyond. They got their name from a most excellent researcher Marie Curie, who was also genuinely mobile and convinced that science and scientific training should be international. And according to the European Commission, it should not only be international mobility, but also intersectoral and interdisciplinary. So these fellowships will be awarded to the most promising researchers of any nationality who want to benefit from advanced training and working on a research project abroad. The experienced researcher, or abbreviated usually in the documents ER, according to the EU, must be, at the date of the call deadline, in possession of a doctoral degree or have at least 4 years of full-time equivalent research experience. Full-time equivalent research experience is measured from the date when a researcher obtained the degree entitling him or her to embark on a doctorate. Host organizations should be institutions active in research and training. They should be located in EU member states or associated countries. They can be from the academic as well as the non-academic sector, universities, public or private research institutes, international European interest organizations, etc. The academic sector refers to public or private higher education establishments awarding academic degrees, public or private non-profit research institutions whose primary mission is to pursue research, and international European interest organizations. The non-academic sector refers to entities not included in this definition of the academic sector and fulfilling the requirements of the Horizon 2020 rules for participation regulation. The European Commission considers mobility between organizations to be an asset for the personal and career development of researchers. Mobility strengthens intersectoral collaboration and promotes the acquisition of new skills and knowledge, thereby contributing to increased research creativity, efficacy, and also performance. The mobility of the researcher to another country is an eligibility criterion for receiving MSCA funding. So there is the so-called mobility rule, with which researchers should comply in order to be eligible for such an individual fellowship. For the standard European fellowship, it says that the researcher should not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of their future host for more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to the call deadline for submission of proposals, which will this year be the 9th of September. For certain subtypes of the individual fellowship, the mobility rule is more relaxed. I will come back to this later in this presentation. What is important to mention is that the MSCA mobility rules do not necessarily relate to the location stated in the current or previous employment contract of the researcher. It is the actual location of residence that is taken into account, not the country of legal residence. The two determining elements are the actual place of residence and the place of main activity. The individual fellowship, as all Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, have a so-called bottom-up approach, meaning research fields are chosen freely by the applicants. All domains of research and technological development are eligible for funding. On an institutional level, a good reason to apply for an individual fellowship is that institutions can host researchers working on projects funded fully by the EU. And with the help of an individual fellowship, researchers can diversify their competences as mentioned and acquire new skills through advanced training and mobility. So there are benefits for researchers as well as for institutions. And if there is an eligible researcher with a project idea that could be carried out at an eligible host institution, the path is clear. Just remember that with this strong focus on training of the researchers and on the career development, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Individual Fellowship is not just a regular research project. An excellent research project is, of course, the basis of the fellowship, but this project should be carried out at the most appropriate host institution under the supervision of a suitable supervisor. In addition to that, excellent training should be provided. Research training on the one hand, and also training in transferable skills on the other hand. This all should benefit the researcher's career maximally. So we call this the magic triangle. There are basically two types of individual fellowships, the global and the European fellowship. We'll have a look at the two of them now. The European fellowships are for fellows coming to or moving within Europe. They usually last 12 to 24 months. For the European fellowship, a researcher applies jointly with a host institution for funding of a research project. The host institution is located in a European member state or associated country. The host recruits the researcher and appoints the supervisor as well. There are 4 different types of European fellowships. The standard European fellowship with its 8 scientific panels, and the career restart, the reintegration, and the society and enterprise fellowships, all of which are multidisciplinary. So for the standard European fellowship, the 8 scientific areas are the following: chemistry, social sciences and humanities, economic sciences, information science and engineering, environment and geosciences, life sciences, mathematics, and physics. The standard mobility rule applies here, so researchers shouldn't have spent more than 1 year in the country of their future host in the 3 years prior to the call deadline. These standard European fellowships are for researchers of any nationality. The Career Restart Panel, or abbreviated CAR, is implemented as a multidisciplinary panel of the European fellowships, which provides financial support to individual researchers who wish to resume research in Europe after a career break. This can be after parental leave, after working outside research, etc. The researcher must have had a career break in research, meaning they were not active in research for a continuous period of at least 12 months within the 18 months immediately prior to the deadline for submission. Again, this is the deadline is the 9th September this year. Active in research means being employed or holding a scholarship in research. Parental leaves and unpaid leaves of absence will not be counted as periods of active engagement in research, even if a formal employment relationship exists during these periods. Publication activities or mere association to a university, this is any other link to the university that is not considered as an employment contract or a fellowship agreement, those are not taken into account either. This subtype is only for nationals of EU member states or long-term residents. Furthermore, the researcher must move or have moved from any country in the world to the member state or associated country where the beneficiary will be located. Specifically, the researchers cannot have resided or carried out the main activity in the country of the beneficiary for more than 3 years in the 5 years immediately prior to the call deadline. You see that for this CAR subtype, the mobility rule is more relaxed. A career restart fellowship can last up to 36 months, which is 1 year longer than what is possible in other European fellowship subtypes. And there is another thing that should be stressed here. There is a special weighting applied for the career restart fellowship. I'll come back to this a bit later. The reintegration panel is a multidisciplinary panel of the European fellowships dedicated to researchers who wish to return and reintegrate in a longer-term research position in Europe. The researcher must be a national or long-term resident of a member state or associated country. Long-term residence means a period of legal and continuous residence within one or more EU member states or associated countries of at least 5 consecutive years. Furthermore, the researcher must move or have moved directly from a third country to the member state or associated country where the beneficiary is located. Also here, the mobility rule is a bit more relaxed than in the standard European fellowship, meaning the researcher should not have resided or carried out the main activity in the country of the future host more than 3 years in the 5 years prior to the call deadline. And also for the reintegration type, a special weighting is applied. The Society and Enterprise panel is a multidisciplinary panel as well, and it is dedicated to career opportunities for researchers seeking to work on research and innovation projects in an organization from the non-academic sector. The host institution must be an entity from the non-academic sector, though. Any entities with a capital or legal link must also be from the non-academic sector. Applicants should apply to the S&E panel only if they are certain about their non-academic status. The researcher may be of any nationality here, and no age restrictions apply. However, the Society and Enterprise mobility rule applies, which is also a bit more relaxed. And the researcher should not have moved from any country. Yeah, also here, the researcher should have moved to the country of the future host, but the should not have been longer there than 3 years in the 5 years prior to the call deadline. So those were the different subtypes of the European fellowships. The global fellowship, on the other hand, is for fellows from Europe going abroad to a third country for 1 to 2 years, and then returning on a mandatory 1-year stay at the European host, the so-called return host. So the researchers apply jointly with one host organization located in a member state or associated country for a research project that has an initial outgoing phase in a partner organization in a third country, like, for example, Australia or the US. The host organization in the EU member state signs the grant agreement and recruits the researcher and appoints also the supervisor. The partner organization nominates a supervisor for the researcher and provides a letter of commitment. So this would be the organization where the researcher is going during the outgoing phase in a third country like the US or Australia. Partner organizations do not sign the grant agreement, and they do not recruit the researcher or claim costs directly. The global fellowships are divided and evaluated in 8 scientific areas. The researcher cannot have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of the third country partner organization where the outgoing phase takes place for more than 12 months in the 3 years before the call deadline. So here, the mobility rule applies to the outgoing phase. Only nationals or long-term residents of EU member states or associated countries are eligible for global fellowships. There is now the possibility to spend up to 3 months in the host institution in Europe before the outgoing phase. This was not possible 2 years ago. The partner organization has to provide an up-to-date letter of commitment because this organization won't sign the grant agreement. That's why they ask for such a letter of commitment. And this letter should be included in part B of the proposal to confirm the partner organization's real and active participation in the proposed action. Such a letter of commitment is only needed for global fellowships. There's no template available, and it should have a header or stamp on it. Oh, wait, this is new in this year's call. Sorry, I almost spoiled this. In this year's call, in the guide for applicants, there is actually a template, as far as I remember, of such a letter of commitment. So in case you're going on a global fellowship, you can provide to the hosting organization a template this year. For all types of fellowship, during the implementation of the action, there is the possibility for the researcher to go on a secondment outside his or her host organization to an organization in a member state or associated country. This is important. The organization where the secondment takes place has to be in a EU member state or associated country. Secondments of the researcher to partner organizations are encouraged, but they should be relevant, they should be feasible and beneficial for the researcher and in line with the project objectives. Applicants should therefore consider carefully whether the research would be advanced by a secondment and whether it should take place in the academic or non-academic sector. In all cases, the secondment must be meaningful and appropriate to the type of fellowship and research field. The secondment phase can be a single period or can be divided into shorter mobility periods. It can take place at one or also at more than one organization, which can be located in the same country as the beneficiary is. A secondment is allowed during any phase of the project to an entity located in a member state or associated country, as I mentioned. While secondments can take place within the same sector, intersectoral secondments are highly encouraged. The indicative budget for this year's call is 328 million euro, which is roughly 30 million euro more than in last year's call. 55 million euro are foreseen for the global fellowships and are distributed between the 8 scientific areas based on the number of eligible proposals received in each of these areas. 263 million euro are distributed between the panels of the European Fellowship based on the number of eligible proposals also received in each of the panels. Except for the Society and Enterprise panel, for this panel 10 million euro are earmarked. So there's a fixed budget for this panel. The distribution of the budget of the call will be proportional to the number of eligible proposals received in each panel, except for S&E, where a specific budget has been fixed. And as I mentioned briefly before, it is important to note that there is a higher weighting for the proposals of the Individual Fellowship Career Restart panel and the Reintegration panel. During the budget distribution, the CAR eligible proposals will have a weighting of 2 times the weighting of eligible proposals in other panels. For the RI panel, the weighting will be 1.5 times higher. So if you're eligible for one of those panels, your chances of funding will be higher because there's this higher weighting for these panels. The financial support from Marie Skłodowska-Curie individual fellowships takes the form of a grant covering 100% of the project's eligible costs. These are not related to the real cost of the action, but are calculated exclusively based on the fixed units set out in the work program. The EU contribution will be automatically calculated from the information provided in Part A of the proposal, using the rates and coefficients given there in tables 1 and 2 of the work program. So if you're interested how exactly this works, you have to go to check that in the work program. It is crucial that the information given in Part 1 about the participating organizations and research is correct and up to date, and that it is identical to the information given in Part B. The EU covers costs related to the recruitment of the researcher, but also research, training, and networking costs, as well as management and indirect costs. The maximum amount is fixed in the grant agreement. There are different cost categories. Basically, there are the researcher unit costs and the institutional unit costs. Researcher unit costs are divided into living allowance, mobility allowance, and family allowance. The living allowance is the EU contribution to the gross salary cost of the researcher and amounts to €4,880 per month. It can only be used to this end. This amount is adjusted through the application of a country correction coefficient for the cost of living according to the country in which the beneficiary is located, of course. For the outgoing phase of the global fellowship, the country correction coefficient of the third country partner organization will be applied. However, the adjusted amount will not change in case of secondments to a partner organization in another country. For Switzerland, the country correction coefficient is 1.212. The living allowance is a gross amount. The net salary results from deducting all compulsory social security contributions, like employer and employee fees, as well as direct taxes from the gross amount. The host organization may pay a top-up to the recruited researcher in order to complement this contribution, but this is not mandatory. In addition to the living allowance, a mobility allowance will be paid to recruited researchers. This amounts to €600 per month. Furthermore, a family allowance will be paid in case the researcher has family obligations. In this context, family is defined as persons linked to the researcher, either by marriage or by a relationship with equivalent status to a marriage, or as dependent children who are actually being maintained by the researcher. This allowance amounts to €500 per month. The family status of the researcher will be determined at the date of the deadline of the call. This will be the 9th September this year, and will not be revised during the lifetime of the action. Research, training, and networking costs amount to €800 per month and are managed by the beneficiary, so the hosting institution, to contribute to expenses related to costs for training and networking activities that contribute directly to the researcher's career development. This can be participation in conferences, trips related to the work of the action, training, language courses, seminars, lab material, books, library records, publication costs, etc. Then costs for research expenses, also costs for visa-related fees and travel expenses, or also additional costs arising from secondments, like travel costs or accommodation costs for optional secondments. Research, training, and networking unit costs should be used for the research, training, and networking activities outlined in the proposal. But unused amounts may be used for other action-related purposes. For example, to increase the salary of a researcher or to organize additional training activities. Then the last category, the management and indirect costs, they amount to €650 per month, which is to be used for the management and indirect costs of the project. The unit cost for management and indirect costs should be used for the management of the action, but also there, unused amounts may be used for other project-related purposes. Here's an example of a French researcher without family obligations who obtained his PhD in chemistry, which doesn't matter, but I mention it anyway, in France on June 2014, and who applies for a standard fellowship jointly with a university in Germany for a 24-month fellowship in the chemistry scientific area. So during the last 3 years, he was in Germany for 5 months. So he is eligible. Part B provides for a secondment split in 2 periods of each 2 months at an industrial partner in Ireland. And you see that living allowance is multiplied with the number of months and the country correction coefficient for Germany. Together with the mobility allowance, the researcher cost will sum up to €126,000. And the institutional costs, now let me check, yeah, roughly. And the institutional costs will be €34,000, €34,800. So in total, the EU will pay €162,806.4 to this researcher over the 2 years. Oh, sorry, I should have moved this slide. So you see again here, the total is €162,806.4. Here's another example of a married Chinese researcher. She obtained her PhD in physics in France and was employed in research full-time since 2008 at a Polish university. The researcher applies for a global fellowship with a 24-month outgoing phase to a university in the US and a 12-month mandatory return period in Spain. So for the outgoing phase of the global fellowship, the country correction coefficient of the third country partner organization will be applied. However, the adjusted amount will not change in case of a secondment to a partner organization. So for this fellowship, the total costs will be €263,732, composed of €211,000 roughly researcher costs and €52,000 roughly for the institutional costs. I hope this is clear. In all fellowship types, there is the possibility to work part-time. And this doesn't need to be indicated on proposal stage. I just wanted to mention it here. But once the proposal is retained for funding, so successfully evaluated, you will be invited for grant agreement preparation. And it is on that stage that you can ask for part-time work. I won't go into details here, but it's just important that you know it is possible and it's not on proposal stage that it needs to be decided. Every individual fellowship proposal is composed of Part A and Part B. Part A contains administrative forms, and Part B is the core part of the proposal. It contains the details of the proposed research and the training activities, along with the practical arrangements planned to implement them. This part will be used by the independent experts to undertake their assessment. Each applicant must fill in the administrative forms for the proposal, which will be used in the evaluation and further processing of the proposal. Part A is an integral part of the proposal and has a number of mandatory fields such as the name of the supervisor, the researcher, etc. So this information will be used also to verify eligibility. In section 1, for example, you provide general information and instructions like the acronym, abstract, type of fellowship, scientific area. You choose the descriptors. In section 2, administrative data of participating organizations need to be provided. Section 3 is about the budget. Section 4 about ethical aspects. And in section 5, you answer call-specific questions and fill in several declarations related to eligibility and personal data. Yeah, also related to data management, open research data, pilot, etc. As part B of their proposal, applicants must submit 2 separate PDF documents in the Funding and Tenders Opportunities portal, Part B1 and Part B2. So for Part B1, the maximum total length is 10 pages, and it should be composed of Section 1, the excellence part, Section 2, impact, and Section 3, implementation. Of the maximum 10 pages applied to Sections 1, 2, and 3, the applicants are free to decide on the allocation of pages between the sections. but the overall page limit will be strictly applied. So after the call deadline, excess pages will automatically be made invisible and will not be taken into consideration by the experts. We advise to use the template of Part B, available as rich text format version on the call page in the Funding and Tenders Opportunities portal. Applicants shouldn't include any cover page or summary table, as these would count towards the page limit. Part B2 must contain sections 4 to 7. The CV is intrinsic to the evaluation of the whole proposal and is assessed throughout the 3 evaluation criteria by the expert evaluators. Ensure that the information provided in Part A and B is fully consistent. Always mention full dates in your CV. The CV should be limited to a maximum of 5 pages and should include the standard academic and research record. A list of all participating organizations indicating the legal entity name, the department carrying out the work, and the supervisors should be provided in section 5. Applicants submitting research proposal for funding for Marie Curie actions in Horizon 2020 should demonstrate proactively in their proposal that they are aware of and will comply with ethical principles and applicable international, European, and national law. This will be done in section 6. And for global fellowship proposals, a letter of commitment of the partner organization who is hosting the outgoing phase in a third country must be included in Part B2 to ensure their real and active participation. But this applies only to global fellowships. Proposals are submitted in a single stage and evaluated in one step. The evaluation of proposals is carried out by the Research Executive Agency of the European Commission with the assistance of independent experts. The REA staff ensure that the process is fair. Experts perform evaluations on a personal basis, not as representatives of their employer, their country, or any other entity. They are required to be independent, impartial, and objective, and to behave throughout in a professional manner. They sign an expert contract, including a declaration of confidentiality and absence of conflict of interest before beginning their work. Confidentiality rules must be adhered to all times before, during, and after the evaluation. Each proposal will be assessed independently by at least 3 experts. And after carrying out their individual evaluation, experts will join in a consensus discussion to agree on a common position, including comments and scores for each award criterion. And this results in a consensus report, including scores for each award criterion. In addition, an independent observer will be appointed by the Research Executive Agency to observe and report on the evaluation process. The proposals will be evaluated against the MSCA-IF award criteria, applying weighting factors, both set out in the work program. Proposals are evaluated remotely, and the evaluation scores will be awarded for each of the 3 criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. All of the separate elements of each criterion will be considered by the experts in their assessment. Each evaluation criterion will be scored out of 5. Decimal points may be given. The scores indicate the following with respect to the criterion on the examination, from 0 to 5. A weighted total score will be calculated based on the scores of the 3 individual criteria and converted into a percentage of the maximum score. There is a self-evaluation form available on the Funding and Tenders portal via this link indicated on this slide. So this year's, the 2020 IF call has been open since 8 April and will close on 9 September this year. The evaluation, on 8 September, excuse me. please excuse. The evaluation of proposals will take place between October and December 2020, and results will be communicated in February next year. The first possible starting date is 1st March 21, and the last possible starting date will be the 1st September 22. So you can delay the start of such a fellowship for about 1.5 years, maximally. In last year's call, there were 9,709 eligible proposals submitted. Of those 9,709, 1,475 proposals were retained for funding and appeared on the main list. You see here the proportions of proposals in the different subtypes of fellowships. In the outer ring, the numbers of submitted proposals are shown, and in the inner ring, the number of successful proposals. The majority of proposals, 7,602, was submitted as standard European fellowship. You can see clearly that the success rates were higher in the global fellowships, in the career restart, the reintegration, and the society and enterprise panel than in the standard type. This has to do with the special weighting that was applied, and also with reserved budget for the S&E panel. Here I show you the success rates in numbers. The S&E panel had the highest success rate in last year's call with 27.55%, followed by the global fellowships and the RI and CAR subtype. Overall success rate was roughly 15%. On this slide, I show you the successful European fellowships in the different calls since the start of Horizon 2020, so in 2014. You see that the highest numbers of successful proposals in the meantime are from the life sciences and social sciences panel. This is for European fellowships, different subtypes, and this is the same for the global fellowships. And here, in the global fellowships, the social sciences panel is by far the biggest ranking list, followed by the life sciences. And I show you here the number of funded individual fellowship, European fellowship proposals per country. And you see in the red frame that since the start of Horizon 2020, Switzerland has increasing numbers of successful fellowships. Don't consider the year 2014. In this year, Switzerland was not yet associated to Horizon 2020, and that's why there were only 3 proposals funded on an exceptional basis. But usually between 50 and 100 proposals with Swiss host institutions are funded per year. And this is how it looks for the global fellowships. You see here, there's a much lower number of global fellowships funded overall. We are often asked if upon resubmission of a proposal, there is a higher chance of success. And you see that compared to an overall success rate of roughly 15% for first submissions, or for the total number of submissions, the success rate of resubmissions is substantially higher with 22%. And one last statistical information I would like to give you. As you know, there is no limit on age of the applicants. We are often asked if age has any influence on the success. You see on this slide that between 0 and 12 years after PhD, the success rate is higher than for the rest. However, there's no direct causality. Information on all funded individual fellowships, as well as all the other funded Horizon 2020 projects, is published on the Cordis website. So examples of funded individual fellowships can be found on Cordis, including abstract and information on the beneficiary. Filters can be applied so you can look for projects funded in your research area or also for projects funded with Swiss host institutions, for example. Proposals must be submitted electronically using the European Commission's online submission service. This is accessible via the Funding and Tenders portal. The proposal should be prepared by the researcher in cooperation with the host organization, which is represented by the main supervisor in the framework of the proposal. The experienced researcher and the supervisor must be two different people. Proposals can be created and submitted by the supervisor or the researcher. However, the submission of the proposal and other actions that follow this procedure, such as withdrawal, for example, fall under the final responsibility of the applicant organization as represented by the main supervisor. Only one proposal per individual researcher may be submitted to this call. Each host organization must have a participant identification code, abbreviated PIC. You can check if the host organization and partner organization for global fellowships is already registered on the participant register page, indicated here below under this link. If you are interested in more information or if you want to prepare for proposal writing, you should familiarize yourself with the guide for applicants and also the MSCA part of the work program. In case you have questions or need clarification, please don't be shy to get in touch with us. Isabel and I, together with the institutions in the regions, we offer individual fellowship proposal writing trainings in different cities in Switzerland to help applicants to write a competitive proposal. Due to this year's special situation, we will hold some of them online, whereas others will probably still be carried out as physical meetings. We will decide this in the next days together with the Swiss institutions that host these trainings. But you can find an overview on this link, and in due course, all those proposal writing trainings will be published on Euresearch's event page. Furthermore, for applicants with Swiss host institutions, we offer access to our online tutorial. To get access, you should get an account on the Euresearch website and then write an informal email to msca@euresearch.ch, providing information on your future host and supervisor. Your name will then be put on the list of users and you will be able to access the tutorial via the specific MSCA page on the Euresearch website. And for applicants who prefer a written document, we prepared an annotated version of this year's guide for applicants with our comments to the different subsections of the proposal. If you are interested to get it, please write an email indicating your future host and supervisor. And if you have access to the online tutorial page, you will find it also there. For worldwide support, so if your future host is not located in Switzerland, I would like to invite you to look for the national contact point in the country of your future host via this link here below. Questions of any kind can also be submitted to the Horizon 2020 inquiry service. They're usually very fast and they answer questions usually within 24 hours. And this is the link to the official Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions website. So if you want to know more about other Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, or if you want to watch testimonials for the individual fellowship, I would like to invite you to visit this site. The portal of Euresearch Switzerland provides information and assistance to researchers as well as employers, and it contains practical information concerning professional and daily life, as well as information on job and funding opportunities. The different Euresearch centers help researchers and their family to plan and organize their move to a foreign country, providing assistance in all matters related to mobility. All services of the Euresearch network are free of charge, which is very practical and generous. The network of national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions runs an FAQ blog, which can be found together with lots of other useful documents on the project website, Net for Mobility Plus. And if you have questions, as I mentioned before, please feel free to contact my dear colleague Isabel or myself via our generic email address, msca@euresearch.ch. We are the Swiss national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. And our organization is called Euresearch and is a network with offices in 10 different regions all over Switzerland. So you can also contact one of our Euresearch network members working in your region. This is usually the first entry point for you. The contact details of all the people working in our regional offices can be found on our homepage under the contacts page. I would like to repeat that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel soon. So you are welcome to rewatch it there or also to share the link with interested colleagues. And you will receive the slides of this webinar, including all the links in our follow-up email, which we send most likely this afternoon. Yes. And please feel free to get back to us for any kind of questions you might have. And with this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a lovely day.